We're now turning to the Four Corners region, which is Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico, this portion of the United States. At the core of this is the region that has in the past been referred to as the territory of the Anasazi. Today we refer to it as the region of the ancestral Pueblo people. And the reason for that is Anasazi is a later term applied by the Navajo, which has negative connotations. So we refer to the original people who dwelled in the Pueblos as the ancestral Pueblo people. They are going to be the ancestors of the dwellers of modern Pueblos today. Folks who live in places like Taos or San Ildefonso, the latter of which is the home of Maria Martinez. The ancestral Pueblo people lived in this region for a very long time, approximately 2,000 years. The tail end of that, somewhere 700 to 1200 CE Common Era, was the time period in which they actually built the pueblos. That word pueblo is Spanish and it means village. When we, as art historians, refer to it, we're talking about the apartment style dwellings of the ancestral Pueblo people. They all go back to a single unit, which would have been the pit house back in the day, back in the beginning, when individual families lived in small enclosures like the ones I have diagrams of. And I actually have one that's been reconstructed and excavated in the lower right. This is a small unit that has a roof entrance, and I think you can see it right here. How do we get into the dwelling? Well, folks, we have to go through the roof, which would have been covered, and down a ladder. So you have to be agile to get inside. There are four roof supports around that hole, which makes good sense. It's constructed with adobe and plaster walls, and it has, as parts of its construction, a fire pit, which we would use for warmth, we would use for cooking, a deflector to protect the fire from air coming in, a vent, and most importantly, a sipapu. You can see these features up in the diagram right here. Here's our fire. You can think of it as the hearth in the home, and it's of course underneath the opening so the smoke can go out. There is a ventilation unit, an opening for air to come in from outside. We need to put a deflector right here to protect the fire from being blown around by the air. Then there is this located over here. It's not in the exact center, and it is the sipapu. The sipapu is a symbolic hole in the floor that represents the spot of emergence, the place where ancestral Pueblo people believed they came from the earth below up to the earth up above. In other words, this is a very strong symbol that's a part of their creation story. Why does this matter? This becomes the foundation for the later kivas that will be the sacred architecture of the Pueblo dwellers. This is Cliff Palace, located in Mesa Verde, Colorado. It's one of the most famous of the Pueblo complexes, dating from the 13th century. It's in O'Reilly 8.61, and it's an amazing place. You can also go visit it today, which I'd encourage everybody to try and do. It was built into the cliff wall, and what that does by placing the pueblos directly into nature is to take advantage of the natural landscape, the natural setting. Here, when it can become very cold in the winter, you can capture the early morning sun rays that fall directly onto the Pueblo complex, gently warming the structure. Yet in the summer, and it can get very scorching hot here in the summer, the sun at its worst is going to be above you, coming down on the rock wall of the cliff, and that's going to protect you from the heat of the day. So this has been carefully planned and situated to not just fit into nature, but also to take advantage of the qualities of nature, truly living in harmony with nature. Originally, we think there were over 200 rooms, and there would have been around 24 kivas. This is made out of stone and adobe. This is an overview. All of the circular structures that we're looking at, this and this and this and this, for example, those are the kivas, which were created for private ritual. Public ritual took place on plazas above the level of the kivas. As you can see, this is a very tightly knit society, and it would have been, I'm going to say, a communal kind of living because everybody's living so close together. In other words, you better like your neighbor a lot. Uh, this is one of my favorite slides because I do want people to know that it gets cold here. It can snow here. So the early winter sun is particularly important in bringing the kiva back to life in the winter mornings. This is a closer look at one of the kivas at Mesa Verde, Colorado. It is an example of successful religious architecture. Here are diagrams of a kiva and a closer look at the important parts of a kiva. Top right, you can find the parts, in fact, that I've already shown you for a pit house. A kiva is subterranean or sometimes semi-subterranean. It's circular and it is a sacred space. It is a highly successful religious environment, partly because it is a darkened interior. It helps to set the mood for a religious ritual and allows you to connect very closely with the divine. It does have a place for a fire pit, and that would be located here. This is the deflector. This is the area for ventilation to come in. And this is the sipapu, which is the symbolic emergence hole. And it comes from the creation story of the Pueblo dwellers. This creation story seems to have been shared, and it is maintained by the people living in the modern Pueblos today. Obviously, this is derived from the pit house, so it's very long and continuous tradition. These individual smaller kivas also were for family units or clans. The kiva itself is conceived of as a place of transition, a place that goes between two worlds, a place that's between the spiritual and the physical, and the darkness associated with the interior helps to convey this ritual sense of connection with the divine, allowing us to feel that we are entering into an area that is sacred and changing, basically altering our perceptions and our reality. The pueblos were built with stone and adobe, but required timber for supports. All of the ladders in the pueblo complex also are created out of timbers. So each time you see a ladder, think two trees and the branches from the trees creating the rungs of the ladder. This is reconstructed. This is a plaza floor where public performances could take place, and these are the openings for the kivas. You can see the ladders that would take us down into the kiva area. This is another reconstruction over on the left, and I might call this a semi-subterranean kiva construction. This is Pueblo Bonito. And this is located 860 in Mr. O'Reilly's textbook, and I have various dates for this, 11th through the 13th centuries. It is part of what is referred to as the Chaco phenomena. The area around Chaco Canyon seems to have displayed a fluorescence in terms of development in architecture and population. Some of this may have been due to pilgrimage to this site. There are approximately 300 compounds that have been located over a space of 9 miles. Some of these are in mesa tops, some of them are down on the ground with the cliffs as a kind of backdrop. The site itself covers around 4 acres, and there are estimated to be around 800 rooms. get this, up to 5 stories. Now, Mesa Verde was up to around 3 stories. Either way you go, this is huge in comparison to the buildings that were going on in Europe in the 11th, 12th, and 13th centuries. So, pretty progressive stuff here. It's estimated that there were up to 1,000 residents, but it is the great kivas that are located, and I think you can see some of them here, um, that are the most impressive. These we think would have been for group activity, group ritual performance, and might be a part of the explanation that helps us to frame Pueblo Bonito and the Chaco Canyon region in general as an actual site of pilgrimage. There are also roads leading here, so we think there was an effort to connect the people here with people from outside. This is another view, and it does have some text that helps us to remember one of the issues that archaeologists are trying to work out is what in the world was this? I'm leaning towards a pilgrimage center. Certainly, it was a regional center, a religious place because of the kivas, a place for ritual. We also think it had economic importance. We find the remains of materials here that there was some manufacturing that took place. For example, turquoise bits that would have been turned into jewelry or sacred objects. And again, the reference to the roads, straight roads, directing people to this location. This is a view inside some of the buildings at Chaco Canyon, Pueblo Bonito in particular. It is a sandstone that's been cut to fit, so it's sandstone masonry. What I would like you to see, however, is the beams that support the floors as we go up. Every time we go up a level, or every time we make a ladder, we have to cut down a tree. And I'd like you to keep that in the back of your mind. One of the amazing objects of the Chaco region is the sun dagger, which also comes from the ancestral Pueblo people. It is located 440 feet off the floor of the canyon on the top of a butte, or you can think of it as a small mesa. Up here, you can see a little circle. This is where it is located. And this is an astronomical calendar facing the southeast. It was crafted from 3 sandstone slabs. These folks who specialize in stone, geologists, tell us these were split from a single entity of stone. So the work would have been done up there. These range in height from 6 to 9 feet, and they go up to 1 foot in thickness. Each of them, though, weighs 2 tons. Okay, I'm trying to impress you with the amount of work that would have been involved in crafting this object. There are carved spirals inside, which become a part of the calendar itself. This was only discovered by archaeologists in 1977, and the reason for that is quite simple. It blends into the landscape, plus the fact it's kind of hard to get to. It also is a calendar that only works for around 17, 18 minutes a day. When the sun is in the appropriate position in the sky, it shines between the slabs, and remember those are split apart, marking the seasons and the time of year. It's estimated that this is equal to the accuracy of Stonehenge. Am I trying to impress you? Oh, yeah. At first, typically, there was prejudice that this was constructed by the ancestral Pueblo people, and that, of course, is due to a Western prejudice that Native Americans lacked the capabilities to create something like this. However, these folks were farmers. They were tied to the land. They knew the skies. They knew nature. And this almost certainly in some way was used for planting and for harvesting rituals. We have no idea how, but I can say definitively that it blends into the landscape just the way the architecture does. This is a view of what it looks like when you get up there, and I think I don't have to explain why it took so long for people to figure it out, that it was even there.